If you had to pick 4 vegetables that would go in a survivor garden, what would they be? Guten Yardening, everybody! When we're picking out the vegetables that we plant on a regular basis here at Guten Yardening, we are pretty specific because we want to make sure we take advantage of our space. But if we're talking about a survival garden, then we have a few criteria that need to be considered when we talk about our top 4. So the considerations we're keeping in mind for these vegetables that we're choosing today are the nutritional value and caloric content, the ease and even the time it takes to grow the vegetables, the length of time that we can store them, and of course, the versatility and taste. Please leave a comment with the vegetables you would choose for your own survival garden. Now these are in no particular order, but let's go ahead and start with spinach, which is one of the fastest growing vegetables that we plant here at Guten Yardening, with harvests available as soon as a month into the growing process. This is a nice cold hardy vegetable and it is nutritionally dense. I mean, it is packed with nutrients, probably more so than most other vegetables that are out there. And given how easy it is to grow from seed and how many different crops you can get in a single, even short growing season, this is a must for your garden. Now this vegetable is high in fiber, vitamin K, magnesium, potassium, and the list goes on and on. It's incredibly nutritious, and because this is a cut and come again vegetable, meaning you can harvest it while it grows, you're going to have that nutritional value throughout the plant's life. Now we're here in zone 5, which means that we do have a pretty cold start and into our growing season, but spinach can handle that quite well. So even if you're in a shorter growing season, you can find a variety that's going to be just fine for you. And if you're in a warmer season, there are varieties that won't bolt as soon as it sees some of that heat. There are varieties that are specific to your area. So you can find a nutrition-packed vegetable that will fit your growing needs. And when it comes to storage, what we've found is the easiest way for us to store spinach is to blanch it and freeze it. And we've had spinach that we've eaten 1 to 2 years after freezing, and it has been delicious in our recipes. And when it comes to the versatility of spinach, it's great fresh, it's great in salads, and when it's frozen, it is fabulous in soups, in other recipes as well. So it stores really well, and it definitely cooks well, and is a great addition nutritionally and taste-wise to your other entrees. And on top of that, when it comes to seed collection, once a spinach plant bolts, it just takes a little bit of patience to get in there and get those small seeds. But one plant can produce hundreds of seeds that is going to set you up for future plantings. Next up, we've got our sweet potatoes. We absolutely are obsessed with sweet potatoes here, and it's not just because of how they taste, which I'll get to in a second. A cup of sweet potatoes averages over 100 calories, and so this is a calorically dense vegetable. In addition to the calories, you've got tons of fiber, potassium, vitamins B and C, and again, this is just the start. Sweet potatoes are a healthy, nutrient-dense vegetable and one that we highly recommend you grow. Now this one does require a longer growing season, with most varieties needing about 100+ days in order to get to maturity, but if you have the space, it is worth it. And the nice thing about sweet potatoes is there are varieties that are bush varieties, and then there are vining varieties, which means that some of the varieties can be grown in smaller areas. You can expect to get a couple of pounds with good nutritionally dense soil, a couple of pounds per plant as well when it comes time to harvest. And what we found is that storage is pretty simple. We keep ours in our basement, and we've had some that have lasted us 8 to 10 months in storage. And one of the nice things about sweet potatoes is once you've overwintered them and you are ready to plant again the next season, you take some of those sweet potatoes and you can either propagate them in soil or you can propagate them in water and start slips from the past season's harvest to grow again for the upcoming season. So it's really easy to keep them going year after year, especially if you find a variety that grows really well in your area. Now when it comes to taste, sweet potatoes are at the top of the list for me when it comes to vegetables. I love that sweet flavor, and you know that there are so many different varieties out there, and each one has its own unique texture and unique taste. So it's pretty easy to find a variety that is going to be the one that fits what you want for all your recipes. Now for us, we steam sweet potatoes, we bake sweet potatoes. We put sweet potatoes in soup. We sometimes steam them, blend them up, and let them become part of the broth of the soup. They are a fantastic addition to many of the meals that we make here at Guten Yardening. And on top of that, if you like, you can also eat the leaves, which are similar in taste from our experience to spinach. So it's a great crop and there's not a ton of waste. Let's move on to our winter squash. Now, we actually focused more on winter squash this past season because we saw some of the benefits of growing a plant that can grow vertically quite easily, which can save you a little bit of space, and one that stores really well. In many ways, for me, the taste of a winter squash is a bit similar, depending on the variety, to a sweet potato as well. So that adds to our enjoyment, that nice sweet flavor. And one of the nice things about winter squash is that typically they have a shorter growing season than sweet potatoes, where some varieties can be harvested as quickly as about 2 months, about 60 days, all the way up to around 100 days. So you're looking at a slightly shorter growing season for the winter squash. And when it comes to storage, I think most websites say you can store for 2 to 3 months. But for us, our experience has been, well, we're still eating some of the winter squash, the Canada crookneck squash, and some of the butternut squash that we harvested about 6.5 months ago. And so for us, we've found storage success far beyond the 2 to 3 months that most people suggest. When it comes to nutritional value, you're looking at fewer calories than sweet potatoes, but still high in potassium and fiber as a baseline. And when it comes to versatility in recipes, these winter squash can be used in just about any recipe that you can use sweet potatoes for, and I'd be hard pressed to find something that's more productive when it comes to a vegetable, because a single butternut squash, for example, can be upwards of 8 to 15 pounds. It can be massive fruits off of a plant, and that plant can produce multiple of those fruits. So productivity is high. And as long as you're not planting varieties that cross-pollinate, you can collect the seeds pretty easily, and one winter squash is going to provide you with a ton of seeds for future seasons' growth. And let's wrap it up with beans. Now, beans offer a massive nutritional value jam-packed into a tiny little product. They are high in protein, fiber, iron, potassium, just to name a few, and they grow so quickly. There are tons of varieties of beans out there, from bush beans to pole beans, and within about a month and a half you can be out harvesting beans from your garden. And what we've found is that the pole bean varieties typically have a longer harvesting season. And so what that means for us is that we can get out there, and the more we pick, the more we're going to see grow on that plant. So we can be harvesting from a plant for several months before it dies off. And in addition to that, because it's so easy to start beans from seed, you can start one set and then wait a couple of weeks and start the next planting, and then you're going to end up with an even longer growing season. Now, one thing we would suggest with beans is make sure you protect the bases from rabbits or other critters that like to come in there and bite them off. That is a devastating thing that can happen to your crop. But beyond that, even if you have a limited space, this typically, because of production, because of nutritional value, is a fantastic crop for almost any size garden. And I would say taste is key here for beans. Many varieties taste amazing fresh off the vine, raw. And depending on how you want to store your beans, you could be looking at some really long-term storage. We like to freeze our beans after blanching. We have some from a year ago. They taste great when they're cooked up. You can store yours dry. You can can your green beans. You know those last for years. And when it comes to seed storage, all you need to do is leave a couple of pods on toward the end of the season to dry out, and then collect those pods, break them open, and you've got beans to plant again the next season. It's a really simple process with beans, and again, a highly nutrient-packed, great tasting addition to your garden. To be quite honest, it was hard to choose because there are a ton that we like out there, but what we would love to hear from you are your top vegetables that you would grow. Well, if you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to give us a like, leave us a comment, remember to share and subscribe, and most importantly, remember, when you're with us, you are good to grow.